Nestled amid the rolling hills and vibrant flora of Mississippi, the landscape in 1839 depicts a world both breathtaking and distorted, an Eden touched by the iron grip of slavery. Here, the verdant fields stretch endlessly, a quilt of brilliant greens stitched together by meandering rivers and the sweet murmur of nature. Yet beneath this alluring facade lies a labyrinth of human torment and emotional complexity, waiting to be unraveled. The air is heavy with the scent of magnolias and the promise of cotton. It whispers tales of grandeur interwoven with the silenced cries of the oppressed. This dynamic serves not merely as a backdrop, but as a character unto itself, one that dances with beauty yet thrives on brutal reality. During this period, Mississippi is flourishing economically, driven by the labor of enslaved individuals who toil ceaselessly under a ruthless sun. These men and women forged the backbone of the state's prosperity in agriculture, picking cotton that would line the pockets of a privileged few, while their lives were shackled in chains of servitude. As the cotton bolls burst under the heat, so too do the tensions boil in the hearts of those who are forced to labor under an oppressive regime. The opulence of the elite transcends mere desperation, creating a stark contrast that defines the era. The plantation houses, lavishly adorned, stand tall against the southern sky, a symbol of power and dominion. The rich white earthenware, polished mahogany furnishings, and sprawling porches seem to radiate a charm that belies the cruelty coiling beneath. For the white plantation owners, their lives are cloaked in luxury, where carefree parties echo with laughter, and the clinking of glasses seems to drown out the harsh cries for freedom. Amid these opulent settings lies the plantation lady, a figure of intrigue and contradictions. Her very existence adds a layer of complexity to the beautiful yet tarnished fabric of society. Amidst this flora and fauna, the plantation lady becomes twice as interesting. She bathes naked with enslaved men, courting scandal with every ripple in the surface of her daily life. As the sun begins its descent, casting golden hues across the Mississippi sky, she invites enslaved men to join her in the cool waters of her private pool. A calculated act of intimacy, defiance, and perhaps a deep-seated loneliness. This chilling yet tantalizing habit reflects a level of audacity unheard of in Southern society. As the ambrosial scent of jasmine lingers and the laughter of white folk dances in the air, the plantation lady's actions draw the line between two worlds that should never have intersected. More than mere acts of rebellion against social norms, her daily rituals serve to both challenge and reinforce the boundaries of power and control. The waters around her become symbols of both prohibition and allure, her nakedness a blatant rejection of the decorum expected of women of her status. The whispers would travel like wildfire, igniting both fascination and disgust, breeding an atmosphere thick with the simmering tension of scandal. How could she, a lady of stature, disrobe in the company of men deemed inferior in the eyes of society? Yet, in her actions one could discern a deeper longing, a desire for connection, for a fleeting escape from the gilded cage of her life. But the plantation lady's risky indulgence does not occur in isolation. It breeds curiosity in the heart of the plantation, stirring the minds of the very men she calls to join her. Some long for the fleeting moments of warmth shared under the cool embrace of water, while others recoil at the implications of their participation in such an audacious routine. Additionally, the risk of social backlash looms as the white folks and enslaved men navigate their feelings about the plantation lady's daily rituals. Conversations on the porches of nearby homes become stifled murmurs, while the enslaved quietly exchange glances, knowing they are caught in a game far beyond their control. The lush, scenic beauty of Mississippi is not simply a setting, it is an oppressive force, just as much a part of the horticultural world as the enslaved men who labor in its shadows. The cotton fields thrive, yet they echo the silent prayers and songs of sorrow from those trapped within their embrace. Each stalk, while seemingly innocent, carries the weight of their hidden stories, tales of heartache, desire, and unfathomable courage. The double life of the plantation lady serves as a mirror, reflecting both the desires and despair of a community trapped between the beauty of the land and its insidious core. As whispers of her scandal spread, it provokes a cataclysm of emotions from both enslaved men and their white counterparts. While some may admire her outspokenness, the defiance against societal expectation, others see nothing but a frivolous woman flirting with disaster. Tensions rise as the whispered word of her peculiar habits runs rampant throughout the region, the skepticism growing thick and heavy in the air, like the balmy Mississippi humidity. Mississippi's landscape, lush and raw, stands as the perfect counterpoint to the contradictory nature of the plantation lady. Her audacious need for intimacy against a backdrop of pain and deplorable injustice. The foliage flourishes as human lives wither, painting a vivid contrast between the visible prosperity of the land and the invisible scars borne by the souls enslaved in its embrace. As we peel back the layers of this narrative, it becomes clear that the landscape of Mississippi is more than mere scenery. It is a tapestry woven from love, hate, longing, and despair. It foreshadows the drama that is about to unfurl and sets the stage for a series of events that will intertwine lives, alter the course of those involved, and leave an indelible mark on history. Ultimately, this journey through the Mississippi landscape urges us to confront uncomfortable truths and immerse ourselves in the experiences that shaped a nation, always reminding us that beauty and horror often coexist within the same frame. The lush landscape of Mississippi is both a paradise and a prison, a place where the raw drama of human emotions spills out into the very fabric of a burgeoning society, teetering on the precipice of change. In the heart of Mississippi, amid the sprawling cotton fields and the oppressive heat of the Deep South, there stood a grand plantation that boasted elegance, yet concealed the darkest of secrets. It was here, in 1839, that the life of one woman would capture the attention of many, not solely for her wealth or beauty, but for her scandalous routines that would surely raise eyebrows, spark gossip, and ignite whispers that danced through the finest parlors of Southern society. This was a tale about a lady of undeniable distinction, the plantation mistress, a venerated figure imbued with power and privilege, leading a life that defied the norms of her day, while engaging in rituals that left a lasting mark on her community. From the outside, the plantation was a picturesque edifice, its grand columns and sweeping verandas reflecting the extravagance of its mistress, who wore her aristocracy like a shimmering gown. Yet within those heavy doors lay a reality that was much more complex and rife with contradictions. The plantation lady epitomized the very essence of Southern gentility. Her days were filled with gatherings and soirees that celebrated wealth, family lineage, and the era's cherished social graces. But behind her velvet-covered doors, the truth unveiled itself. Her penchant for defying the era's constraints turned her into a figure that elicited both admiration and abhorrence. To understand her, one must dive deep into the fabric of her life. She came from a lineage steeped in prosperity, her family having cultivated wealth through generations. With her debut into society, she quickly learned the art of charm and manipulation, weaving her way through the social hierarchies that defined her world. She was well versed in the literature of the time, her mind sharp and astute, ready to engage in debates about politics, literature, and philosophy with the most learned gentlemen in the county. But her allure lay in her unconventional spirit. She broke societal molds with a fervor that would shock her contemporaries. This was a woman unafraid to enjoy her pleasures and explore the boundaries of her station. Yet it was her bathing rituals that truly defined her. They were not mere acts of cleanliness, but elaborate ceremonies designed to showcase both her authority and her audacity. Each day, without fail, she would retreat to the confines of her opulent bathroom, enticing a handful of enslaved men to assist her in the process. They were tasked with procuring water from the well, carrying wood for the fire, and ensuring her privacy was respected. Though the irony of her naked bathing sessions with them, the very individuals subjugated under her control, was a reality laden with societal tensions. She luxuriated in the soothing waters, all while her gaze remained playful yet piercing, offering a curious mixture of superiority and proximity to those whom she deemed both her servants and her companions. It was an arrangement so fantastically outrageous that it sent ripples through the quiet town of Greenwood. Word of her daily indulgences spread like wildfire. Dignified ladies clutched their pearls in shock and titillated intrigue. What would their husbands think of a woman so reckless? How could someone of her stature undermine the very principles of society she'd been raised to uphold? Yet, there remained among her peers an inescapable fascination with the idea of a woman embodying both seduction and domination. They secretly yearned for even a fraction of her scandalous freedom. There was a peculiar enchantment that surrounded her. The plantation mistress openly embraced the enslaved men's presence, not simply as caretakers, but as individuals who were part of a shared experience, an almost clandestine intimacy, dripping with the tantalizing irony of a world where she held the whip hand. Stripped of societal constraints, she disregarded the unspoken rules carved into the very foundations of Southern tradition. For these moments of vulnerability and intimacy, she claimed a semblance of connection that transcended her privileged existence, however fraught with complexity. But it was not simply an amusement for her. It was a rebellion against a system that managed to suppress her desires. The bathing sessions, filled with laughter and exchanges that veered dangerously close to companionship, were her respite from the suffocating expectations of her life as a plantation mistress. They were a crucible of sorts, where the masked realities of power and control dissolved into hushed whispers and shared looks, transforming the desperate undertones of bondage into fleeting moments of shared humanity. Despite the thrill that accompanied her rituals, the consequences loomed heavy on the horizon. The plantation was more than just a palatial home. It was a microcosm of a deeply divided society, a place where opulence thrived on exploitation. The more she indulged, the more the fabric of her existence unraveled, revealing the discontent simmering beneath the surface among those who witnessed the spectacle. For every laugh shared with an enslaved man, there lay a history of pain and sorrow, wrapped tightly around the plantation's legacy. As the furious whispers continued to mount, the plantation mistress began to realize that her daily rituals, intended as vessels of liberation for herself, also served as a mirror reflecting the stark contradictions of her world. She was both a creature of privilege and a woman grappling for agency, caught between the intimate connections she forged and the oppressive structures she perpetuated. In this charged atmosphere of scrutiny, the narrative of the plantation lady took on an even more potent allure, a tale not solely of debauchery and scandal, but of the complexities of the human experience entangled in the dark tapestry of antebellum America. Though her actions sparked scandal and intrigue, they also illuminated a path for deeper conversations about power dynamics, identity, and the human capacity for empathy, questioning the very societal structures that dictated how relationships were formed, perceived, and judged. As whispers floated on the southern breeze, they carried not just tales of scandal, but the essence of a woman who dared to live authentically in a world that asked her to stifle her true self. Thus, the plantation lady lived not only as an emblem of her time, but also as a poignant reminder of the myriad of truths that lay in the intertwining lives of those who dared to confront the boundaries of their reality, even under the watchful eyes of society's unyielding gaze. In the sultry heat of Mississippi, where the air hangs heavy with humidity and the sun beats down mercilessly on the sprawling cotton fields, a scandal unearthed the sordid underbelly of a world that thrived on secrecy and power dynamics. It was within the confines of opulent plantation life that an extraordinary ritual took place, one that defied the norms of propriety and morality. Here we delve into the complexities and contradictions of a plantation lady's unique bathing rituals, revealing the stark contrast between societal expectations and the reality of her daily existence. The grand estate, with its sprawling gardens and elegant architecture, presented a facade of genteel southern living. However, behind the painted shutters and polished brass knuckles resided a clandestine world steeped in tension and contradiction. This plantation mistress, revered for her social standing yet scandalously unconventional in her actions, erected a ritual that both symbolized privilege and revealed deep-rooted power imbalances. Each evening, she descended into a world shared intimately with those whom society deemed next to invisible, the enslaved men who worked tirelessly beneath the weight of oppression. As the sun dipped below the horizon and darkness embraced the vast fields, the mistress prepared for her nightly ritual. The bathing area, nestled within the lush grove of magnolias, transformed into a private sanctuary, yet in its intimacy lay the seeds of controversy. The water, often heated and infused with fragrant herbs, bubbled invitingly, a stark contrast to the grim realities faced by her enslaved laborers. Torn between the luxurious escape of her bath and the knowledge that it was built upon the suffering of others, she drew her bath with a disconcerting sense of nonchalance. Inviting her enslaved men into her bathing ritual was as much an assertion of dominance as it was a personal indulgence. The act of bathing together, surrounded by the sprawling deep greens of Mississippi, was both liberating for her and horrifying for them. She was the embodiment of Southern femininity, relishing in the beauty of her own naked form, while the men, stripped of their own agency, confronted the complexities of their shared existence. The water splashed and shimmered under the lantern's glow, and as her laughter echoed through the grove, it masked the tension simmering beneath the surface. These bathers experienced a raw interplay of intimacy and degradation, transforming the ritual into something both surreal and unsettling. For the mistress, the presence of her enslaved men provided not just companionship, but also a semblance of control. Their bodies, available to her whims, were a constant reminder of the societal constructs that supported her privileged life. For them, each splash of water became a bittersweet taste of freedom, however fleeting. They found themselves entangled in a cycle of complicity, necessary for their survival, yet repugnant in its intense objectification. Discussions flowed as freely as the water, political whispers, dreams of escape, shared histories, each buoyed by the buoyancy of the moment. Yet, in the depths of their laughter lay an unspoken question. What did it mean to be so close, yet so far apart, bound by the material and emotional chains of slavery? These men engaged in a delicate dance filled with perilous contradictions. In those moments, they were not merely laborers. They had become confidants, shrouded in the fog of water, revealing layers of vulnerability. The nightly baths deconstructed the boundaries of their hierarchical roles in an unexpected manner, reigniting the ever-burning flames of rebellion and complicity. The community outside the secluded grove whispered endlessly of these private rendezvous. Neighbors exchanged furtive glances and scandalous stories, crafting a narrative steeped in both outrage and intrigue. The mistress, a woman of reputation, straddled the line between societal acceptance and outrageous scandal. Her daily indulgence reduced her standing amidst Southern aristocracy to a topic of gossip. As tales of her nocturnal bathing rituals spread across plantations, they morphed into cautionary anecdotes serving to highlight the Edens and abysses of human relationships. This lively retelling bolstered the mythos of her life, painting her as both seductress and rebel, a paradox whom no one could truly encapsulate. Yet, beneath the clamour of whispered rumours lay a genuine fascination with the nature of power and humanity. The bath served as a microcosm of the broader societal structures at play. It raised questions about agency, freedom, and the fragility of human dignity in an environment designed to strip it away. The enslaved men, in the embrace of liberation, momentarily shed the weight of their conditions, even as they remained tethered to the very system that oppressed them. Their laughter resonated like a whisper of rebellion, echoing throughout the hidden spaces of the estate. The bathing ritual, drenched in sweat and secrecy, highlighted not only an indulgent escape from the oppressive heat of Mississippi, but also the lives entwined in a web of exploitation and kinship. To the plantation mistress, the act was a daily liberation. To her enslaved companions, it was a brief respite from the realities of bondage. It was an inescapable paradox wrapped in the seduction of intimacy and a reminder of their shared plight. Ultimately, the dark allure of the mistress's bathing rituals illuminated the contradictions of Southern society. One fueled by ambition, wealth, and power that coexisted with moral decay and human suffering. As she revelled in the warmth of the water, immersed in her own world of decadence, the enslaved men swam through a tapestry of resistance and vulnerability. In those moments, they were not merely bathers, but participants in a story that transcended the conventional narratives of their time. A swirling dance of humanity that demanded to be seen, heard, and acknowledged. As we close this chapter revealing the hidden dynamics of their shared bathing rituals, we must confront the tumultuous waters of history itself, understanding that the personal encounters of the past still ripple through the present. They serve as a stark reminder of the lengths humanity will go to maintain its facade while grappling with the eternal struggle for dignity and communion in the face of dehumanization. The Mississippi sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the plantation grounds, where whispered gossip and divided loyalties brewed among the enslaved men and women. For them, the daily spectacle of their mistress bathing naked in the river, with men whom society had deemed property, was more than an eccentric quirk of the plantation lady. It was a source of tension, a flashpoint for simmering resentment and unspoken fears. The reactions were as varied as the shades of brown in the soil, each person holding a different perspective on the strange ritual that had unfolded under the watchful gaze of magnolias and cypress trees. Enslaved men stood, caught in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. For many, the sight of their mistress shedding her garments in the refreshing waters of the river wasn't merely shocking. It was an affront that threatened the fragile hierarchy of their oppressed existence. For these men, who labored under the harsh sun, this was not merely a case of a woman exhibiting her physical form. It represented a transgression of boundaries that were supposed to keep the world clearly defined. Conversations among them were hushed, laden with a mixture of anger, confusion, and a reluctant sort of intrigue. What does it mean for us? How far can she go? They would ponder among themselves, weighing their thoughts against the fear of repercussions for speaking out. Yet within some hearts, a curious fascination lingered. They could scarcely believe their eyes when the mistress, to their collective disbelief, embraced the very men who had been conditioned to live under her ownership. Allowing their bodies to intertwine in these moments of supposed freedom, it sent a ripple of uncertainty throughout the community, showcasing both an intimate familiarity with the enslaved and a profound disregard for the social norms that dictated such interactions. Even as they wrestled with their feelings, the enslaved men harbored dreams of freedom, ideas that could ignite a spark for rebellion, suddenly feeling that their own bodies might also find a workaround reason for closeness, if only to fabricate some semblance of humanity. Meanwhile, on the fringes of the plantation, the local white community buzzed with the latest gossip like bees around a blooming magnolia. The shockwaves emanating from the plantation didn't just ripple amongst those within its boundaries. Neighboring families gathered during balmy evening socials to whisper into their half-filled glasses of whiskey. Can you believe it? The scandal spread like wildfire, fueled by tales that the mistress had not only stripped away her finer garments, but also the very illusions of superiority that the community clung to fiercely. As the local menfolk exchanged their own judgments, mixtures of jealousy and indignation stained their words. A lady of her position ought to know better, they declared, seizing the opportunity to draw lines in the sand between the moral high ground they believed they occupied and the unsettling behavior of their acquaintance. The spectacle took on a life of its own among the community's puritanical ideals, forcing them to confront the stark imbalance in power that the plantation system had manifested. While they were disgusted, there was also a begrudging attraction to the defiance embodied by the plantation mistress. After all, she had the audacity to breach societal decorum, exhibiting a level of boldness that frightened and thrilled them in equal measure. Among the enslaved women, the reactions were perhaps the most complex and heartbreaking. They watched from the sidelines, torn between admiration for their mistress's freedom and the cruel irony of their own bondage. They quickly became aware of their own helplessness, ensnared in a life where the mere notion of intimacy or connection was regulated by the oppressive structures of their reality. Discussions buzzed softly among the women as they gathered at night, their voices echoing like the stars overhead with bitterness and longing. If she can wield such privilege, why can't we grasp for a taste of autonomy? The ensuing clash of emotions, of outrage and envy, of fascination and revulsion, created an undercurrent of volatility within the community surrounding the plantation. Resistance grew in the shadows, manifesting in furtive glances exchanged between the enslaved, as well as in clandestine meetings plotting freedom and autonomy. The men felt the flames of unrest igniting within their hearts as they conspired about defying the origin of their servitude. This coiling tension became palpable when the news of a potential uprising reached the mistress's ears. The very thought of rebellion chilled her blood, heightening her already fragile sense of control over the ebbs and flows of her daily life within the confines of the plantation. Yet, the bathing rituals and the provocative interactions that ensued served as a double-edged sword. For every reaction that simmered in the seething pot of social reaction, there brewed a potent cocktail of disobedience in the air. The sense of tangled relationships began to fracture the old ways. Mistrust and indignation among the enslaved men quickly morphed into a potent mixture of unity and rebellion, pushing them from the confines of their isolation toward a formidable agenda. They began forming alliances, visionaries whispering ideas into the ears of others, the burgeoning hope of a better life growing brick by brick, revolutionizing the plantation narrative from one of servitude to a tapestry laced with the possibility of freedom. As the sun began to set, shifting hues of amber highlighted the tension woven into the fabric of the community. Willingly or reluctantly, each participant in this drama was thrust into a new reality shaped by the actions of one audacious woman. Despite the dangers that lingered in the air, like the distant rumble of an approaching storm, change was afoot. The rippling consequences of her choices would intertwine the fates of all, irrevocably altering lives in ways that none could anticipate. And as shadows lengthened across the Mississippi landscape, the world teetered on the brink of upheaval, revealing a legacy of scandal that begged to be written. In the heart of the Deep South, where the sun-drenched cotton fields stretched endlessly and the humid air hung thick with the scent of magnolia, one woman's life was a tapestry woven with threads of controversy, scandal, and unexpected legacies. The plantation lady, as she was known, has been long remembered not just for her wealth and societal status, but for the audacity of her choices that fundamentally reshaped social mores and perceptions of power dynamics during a time when such boundaries were heavily enforced. Her impact spanned beyond the velvet ropes of her grand estate, infiltrating the very fabric of Mississippi society. More than a single scandal, her life ignited discussions that would resonate through the ages, challenging the rigid structures of race, class, and gender. The daily bathing rituals with her enslaved male laborers, steeped in an open disregard for convention, were not merely acts of intimacy. They were revolutionary gestures that tore at the seams of a society built upon the illusion of absolute control. Every splash of water became a ripple of rebellion that would echo in the hearts and minds of those who witnessed or heard whispers of her transgressions, while some residents of the nearby towns looked upon her with disdain, viewing her as a pariah who sullied the noble image of Southern womanhood. Others were drawn to her, captivated by the allure of her indifference to societal expectations. The plantation lady carved a path that was fraught with peril and intrigue, proving that even within a system designed to uphold certain moralities and hierarchies, individual agency could thrive in unexpected forms. Her choice to bathe naked not only defied the conventions of propriety, but also transformed the enslaved men from mere laborers to participants in a ritual that blurred the lines of power, intimacy, and exploitation. As word spread about her unconventional habits, the community's response was a complex symphony of outrage, curiosity, and fascination. The whispers that filled the corners of bustling markets and the parlors of genteel families concerned not only the morality of her actions, but also the very nature of her relationships with the enslaved men. Was it love? Was it domination? Or was it perhaps the thrill of breaking taboos that she found most enticing? In every conjecture lay the seeds of a debate that would foster a gradual awakening in the rigid social structures governing the South. In the wake of her defiance, burgeoning notions of equality and human dignity began to germinate in the minds of enslaved individuals and white observers alike. Her actions, wrapped in layers of scandal, pushed both communities toward an uncomfortable confrontation with the existing reality of enslavement and the humanity of those deemed property. The plantation lady, with her extravagant life and ostentatiously daring choices, served as a mirror, reflecting the complexities of human relationships amid a backdrop of exploitation and oppression. Fast forward to the decades following her reign as the center of scandal in Mississippi. The ripples she created began to clash with the tides of history. Her audacity contributed to a growing discourse surrounding abolition and the rights of enslaved people. Feminist scholars today reference her life and its repercussions as an early, albeit controversial, instance of female rebellion against patriarchal norms, an assertion that not all women conformed to the societal roles prescribed to them. It set the wheels in motion for women to redefine their position, not only in the family, but in society at large. In various historical narratives, the tale of the plantation lady has morphed over time. From denouncer to heroine, her legacy remains steeped in personal choice and societal consequences. After all, what is left behind when such a life encounters the inevitable passage of time? A legacy of resilience, where the strength lies in the complexity of women's choices amid systemic oppression that left little room for autonomy. Her story, characterized by both scandal and influence, became part of the collective memory of those who sought to understand the intricacies of Southern life, furthering discussions about race and gender at a time when silence was often lauded above truth. And yet, even as we reflect upon the plantation lady's legacy, it is crucial to approach her story with a critical eye, recognizing the myriad voices and experiences of those who were not in power. The enslaved men who participated in her daily rituals were not just silent actors in her drama. They were vital contributors to a narrative that, while inextricably linked to her actions, also encapsulated their shared experience of survival, dignity, and resistance. Their stories, despite being overshadowed by the sensationalism of a plantation lady's audacity, represent the very heart of the historical struggle against the bonds of enslavement. Their humanity, often rendered invisible within the annals of history, deserves acknowledgement and remembrance. Ultimately, as the echoes of the past reverberate into our modern consciousness, we must ponder what legacies we choose to elevate and what consequences they hold for our understanding of justice and inequality today. From scandalous beginnings to profound societal ripples, the life of the plantation lady challenged norms and stirred conversations, leaving a legacy that invites both admiration and critique. In celebrating her audacity, let us not forget the system that constrained so many, and may we recognize that true power lies not merely in scandalous acts, but in the ongoing fight for equality and dignity for all. It is a legacy steeped in complexity, reminding us that history is not just defined by the bold acts of the few, but by the collective journey towards justice that beckons us to continue the work long forgotten.